This is a bit of a sad video because I'm standing in front of a construction site that's just across the road from our home office, and of course it's been vacant for days now with the lockdown. I know that a lot of New Zealanders have left the workplace and are no longer working, and I sincerely sympathise for those people. But on the other hand, there are a bunch of people who have left the work site and are working from home with laptops and cell phones. And in this edition of How to Stay Motivated from Home, I want to speak to the motivators of people who are working from home, to the bosses, to the company owners, to the managers, to the team leaders, and talk about what you can do to help your team to stay motivated. Now, I've been fielding a lot of calls from business owners along the lines of how do I communicate, what's appropriate, and I want to suggest to you that it's highly appropriate to communicate face-to-face. Now, obviously that's not possible, actually being in the same building, in the same room, but you can do face-to-face communication with Zoom, with Microsoft Teams, with Skype, and it is such a level above just phoning people, or certainly miles above emailing people. It's really important to understand that 93% of our communication is non-verbal. 55% of it is our body language and our facial expressions. So when you dial the communication back to only talking to people on the phone, then you're missing out on half of the messaging. And it's easier, if you call me on the phone, it's easier for me not to be 100% present. I can be doing stuff, I can be preparing food, I can be on the computer doing stuff. But when you book a Zoom call with me or a Microsoft Teams call with me as one of your team members, as one of your employees, then I'm going to be present. I have no choice. And also you have the ability to read my face when you ask me questions. One question that you've got to ask now that you haven't had to ask anywhere near as much in the past is, how are you doing? You need to make sure that some of your calls, some of your connections, some of your communications are just simply to ask how people are doing during this time, because this is an absolutely unprecedented time, and many people are struggling in terms of coping with the balance of still working from home and also having to manage and run a family in the same small space. Don't overlook the vital need to validate people with recognition. I was talking to someone who is a frontline worker, and they talked about their boss coming into the workplace and seeing what was wrong and not commending them for the job that they were doing. You know, let's lift our game in terms of giving recognition to people because they're not getting it from their colleagues, from their peers, and so increasingly it needs to come from those who are in leadership roles in business. And lastly, I just want to suggest that you look after yourself at this time. It's so easy for you to be on calls all day long, on the computer all day long, and not look after yourself in terms of health, fitness, exercise, eating well, keeping your fluid intake up, looking after your family. I know some people have had crazy busy times at the start of this lockdown, but I want to suggest to you that you adopt some sort of a pace that is sustainable and increase the communication and the quality of communications with your teams at this time. Look, I had to come inside because I was getting absolutely hammered by mosquitoes out in front of that building site. There's one more thing that I wanted to add, and this is going to be increasingly an aspect of working from home as we go forward, even past the lockdown. I've spoken to a number of employers and senior managers about the challenge of clearly articulating your expectations of people who are working from home. And of course, people who work from home are on a continuum from those who are incredibly busy with very young children, very young dependents, right up to those who are possibly living on their own and who have no other relational needs that they have to give into in the actual home that they live in. And so of course we're going to have different expectations for different staff members, but the key point is clearly articulating your expectations, and if your employees or your team members are in any way unhappy with that, then you go down a track of negotiation. I have a saying that I use in leadership training and development that unarticulated, unmet expectations are the demise of many workplace relationships. I'm sure you have expectations of your team. Are they aware of them? If they're not, then the onus is on you to clearly articulate those expectations to your team members, and then negotiate if necessary what's appropriate given the current parameters that they have been forced into a lockdown by the government and certainly haven't gone there willingly themselves. Clear expectations at this time, clear communication, and negotiating when necessary.